Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast, and thank you once again for giving us your time and listening to our podcast, which is available weekly on YouTube and other platforms. I want to thank Espacio 1839 for allowing us to do our podcast here inside of their little store. Don't forget to visit espacio1839.com to buy some books, buy some t-shirts, or come here at 1839 East 1st Street in Boyle Heights to take a look around the store and see what they got for you. Remember, this is a listener-supported podcast now, so visit our Venmo. Hit us up on Venmo at DANCNG SOBR. That's at DANCNG SOBR. And just send us a little something. Thank you so much for your support. This week, our guest, Boyle Heights native, painter, illustrator, Mr. Ramón Vargas. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast, and today we have our Boyle Heights native, like Santa Ana resident, Mr. Ray Vargas, aka Ramón Vargas, aka that big dude over there.
You're taller than me. I don't know why you're calling me that big dude.
I don't know. You always have that vibe of like a Hellboy, you know.
I like that.
Big dude, yeah.
I like that.
I'm just like a big goofy dude, which is different.
I like Hellboy better than Bouncer. I've heard that before.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, totally Bouncer vibes. What's up, bro? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited and a little bit anxious to be on here. I love the show. I love what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is really cool. This is like a treat.
It's it's something fun that I do every week, and it's a lot of fun to get together with people that I don't really see often. The other thing too that I get to do is like we see each other all the time in art shows or little things like that where we say, "Hey, how are you? Oh, good to see you. All right, see you later."
Yeah.
But with this, I get to have actual conversations with a lot of people that I've known for a long time that I've never done this with. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
We've actually, I don't know if you remember, we've done this once before.
On Zoom.
No.
Oh, when?
Before that.
Oh, at Primera Taza. That's right. Yeah.
And I remember it was around New Year's.
You just wanted to show me your painting. I was like,
you reached out. Oh yeah, right. Because I used to have a mural back there. You reached out, and I knew we knew each other somewhat, right? Like through just like the neighborhood, the scene.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Let's hang out. Come out. I just want to like chat, And I was like, "Oh, Rafael wants to be friends. Like, this is great. Like, he's a cool guy." And then it felt a little more like an interview. And looking back now, I'm like, oh, maybe you're always, I feel like you're always trying things out.
Yeah.
And like,
it's not even that. This is how I talk to people a lot. When like, if I'm in the car with somebody, I just ask a lot of questions. I'm constantly, it's just this that I do here is a lot of just something that happens to me naturally where I just want to like find things out or learn things. I really want to know how people do it.
Yeah.
How do you fucking do the things that you do?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I learned a lot about you too. I knew you as a photographer, but I didn't really know a lot about your acting background and stuff. So that was cool.
Yeah.
To learn everything. There's so many awesome people in Boyle Heights and around
here,
that do so much, so creative.
Yeah, and there's some people that you're like, oh shit, that's badass, everything that you do. And then you learn like how many other badass things they did before, and you're like, oh shit, you've been working for a minute. So let's talk a little bit more about you, and let's talk about like where you grew up and where you were born and all that fun stuff, and get started with Little Ray.
Literally, that's what my family calls me, Little Ray. I grew up, that was my...
Not anymore?
That's my childhood. I mean, they laugh about it now, but I'm actually the third. I'm Ramón Vargas the third, so I'm named after my dad and my grandfather. So my dad was Ray, and I was Little Ray. So some of my cousins still call me Little Ray to this day, yeah.
You could have been like a soul singer. Little Ray and the Boyle Heightsians.
Dang, yeah, I like that. So I born and raised in Boyle Heights. Born in White Memorial Hospital, and grew up in this area on Cornwall and City View.
Okay.
My family owns the apartment building that I grew up in. Small building, like 4 units. So I grew up there. I went to Sheridan Elementary. I went to Hollenbeck Junior High and Roosevelt High School.
What are some of like the memories you have of like Hollenbeck?
That was a rough time for me, I think. I was
early 90s or
started Hollenbeck in 91, 92 maybe. And back then it was 7th grade to 9th grade.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think we were the last year that was 7th grade to 9th grade. Because the next year I went to Roosevelt and I was a 10th grader, but it was the first year there was 9th graders at Roosevelt.
Got it.
So I was never really like a freshman, in high school. Thankfully, I skipped out on that. But at Hollenbeck, I feel like at that age, like a lot of people are making the transition from like just kind of being like an enthusiastic, kind of genuine kid to like being cool, you know, and like taking on like that persona where you're I don't know, like an affectation of like you want to be like, you know, maybe a little more adult. And that came to me late. I didn't get the memo on that. So I was still like a really goofy, kind of genuine like kid in the 7th grade. And I think it took me, I was like really socially awkward at that point. Everyone was acting different. I understand
I think
why.
everybody was socially awkward at that.
That's true. That's true.
7th grade was a tough year for me, like just showing up to school and like the nerves of entering.
Yes.
I went to Belvedere, and the nerves of entering Belvedere and like the size of it and the sound of it and the lunch tables. And
Yeah, exactly.
that was the first year that you like see the separation of people and lunch tables and all that. Like that group's over there, this group.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had a friend that brought me. He was already there, and he was like, "All right, first day of school, you're gonna hang out with me," you know. So,
Dang.
but I was still scared, just like quiet and just looking around.
Yeah, I needed that friend because I was the same. I always think of that scene in Mean Girls where like she's giving a tour of the high school and like what it's like. Yes.
Yeah, everybody thinks of Mean Girls when they think of Ray.
I love that movie. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. By junior high, I had already. I mean, I always knew that I loved to draw, so that was something that was. I didn't see it as like something extra that I was doing or like that was different because I feel like in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, like we all draw, right? Like there's that component of like whatever.
Yeah, it's
stuff
part
we're
of
doing in class.
the curriculum.
Yeah, and I just didn't stop. So, but I realized by junior high, like, oh, like, okay, this is something that people comment on, you know, they point out.
Yeah.
People ask me for drawings and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it was the way adults would react to my drawings that I thought, oh, this is okay, like, you know, they don't believe that I drew this or whatever.
That's interesting. You just made me think of, I mean, not to make it about me again, but
I want to hear about you too. This will go a lot more smoothly for me.
it just reminds me of when one of the times that I was at Roosevelt, and I always kind of drew and always fucked around too, but I was never good enough to like really impress like art teachers. And I remember being in my art class at Roosevelt and looking at other people's drawings and being like, fuck, I suck, you know? I was like, these guys are real artists, you know. So I guess I've had that little syndrome since I was young, where it was like, man, I enjoy art, I love art, I like to do art.
Yeah.
But fuck, you know, some people are just like so fucking talented. So you were probably one of those guys that just can draw something and make it look exactly like.
Yeah, I guess that one of some of my earliest memories. I mean, and honestly, like I must have been like 4 or 5 years old. Would be like being at like a gathering, like a kickback or party with like adults around, and I would always just spend the time drawing. I think a lot of it too, like I was shy and introverted as a kid, so drawing was like an escape. It was I could be in a room full of people talking loudly, and I can just like zero in and like focus in on my drawing, and having like some adult go, did you draw that? And just like yeah, you didn't trace it, or I'm like no, and then like calling over someone else, look at what he drew, and like so those are some of my earliest memories. Yeah, and it
You were
kinda,
like 3? Or?
I think like 4.
Really?
Yeah, like 4 or 5. Yeah, it's like before kindergarten for sure.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know. It was just so I was like, oh okay. It kind of messes you too when you think about it, because sometimes I'm like, I mean, we all get to like those existential thoughts sometimes, like at 3 a.m. when we can't sleep. And we're like, why did I choose this? Like, why the fuck, why am I an artist? Like, it's so hard sometimes. Sometimes it does make me think back to like, go, am I an artist because I really love it, or is it because it gave me that sense of like acceptance and
What's
like,
both?
yeah.
And you're fucking good at it. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can draw something and really see the dimensions, get the emotion from it.
Hopefully that's that's good.
I mean, you can. Yeah, I've seen it in your work. So yeah, you definitely you can see through layers of something, and then through your process, put it on paper, or canvas. So definitely. What else did you do, like in high school? Let's say, did you continue like taking art classes and stuff like that? When did you like start to call yourself an artist or anything like that?
I mean, early.
So you were always
That there was no doubt in my mind.
Wow.
When I was in the fourth grade.
I still don't even know. Like, I still have a million doubts.
Well, I mean, I went through different phases. In the fourth grade, Mr. Dugas's class.
Mr. Dugan.
Oh, this is third grade. I don't remember. But he had us all write at the beginning of the year, like, what we wanted to be, like, for a profession.
Yeah.
And then we put our name and put our profession. And at the end of the year, we did it again, and he wanted to see if it was the same thing or if it had changed.
That's
And
cool.
so at the beginning of the year, I didn't know what to put. So I put printer. I put my name and I put printer because my dad ran a print shop. He had his own printing business.
Cool. Yeah.
And then at the end of the fourth grade, I put animator because I had learned what an animator was. And I loved to draw, and the only thing that I could see around me that was like a job of drawing was cartoons. So I'm like, someone's got to be drawing those, so I could probably get paid to draw those. So I always knew that I was gonna be an artist or do art or draw in some way. Yeah. Now, calling myself an artist, that's another thing.
That's tough. I know more than you. So Roosevelt, how was art school there? Because I had an art. So the teacher that I was thinking about was at Roosevelt, and I remember he was a good teacher, and he took some like he took some attention to me, or
Is it Mr. Ballard?
I don't remember the name. He gave me some attention, but he had like these 3 guys that he really focused on that were just like ridiculous.
I was one of those guys.
Maybe, yeah.
Mr. Ballard really focused on me. I took because we get electives, right? Like in junior high and high school.
Then again, I graduated in '89, so it could have been like,
yeah.
But it's possible he was still there, yeah.
I graduated in '97. But I did have an art teacher. I mean, I took every art class that I could. And, with the way like art programs are funded at public schools, it's tough. One year it would be calligraphy. The next year it would be basic art. The next year it would be drawing. To be honest, they were all exactly the same class, pretty much. And it was the same teacher. And I think after maybe the first class that I took with him, he recognized, that I love to do it. And he pretty much let me do what I wanted. He's like, if you just draw stuff, I'm going to give you an A,
Exactly, yeah.
But one year he did insist that me and this other guy, Ralph, who was a really cool tagger. I always sucked at tagging, but he insisted that we enter this.
I'm better at something than you.
Definitely, a lot of things. Ralph and I entered a contest, and it was a poster that was supposed to be like an anti-drunk driving poster. So we did. I don't know if it was a city contest, a county. I have no idea. But we entered, and I won first place, and Ralph, I think, won second place. So that was pretty cool because I got like
awesome.
I got a gift certificate to an art store to Swain's in Glendale.
Nice.
And I got to go buy a bunch of art supplies. So that was kind of like, okay, like teachers, there were certain teachers throughout me growing up, like that would recognize like, okay, this kid wants to do this, and they would like, support it, which is really cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it was like the La Bamba thing. I won $1,000 in art supplies.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. It was $300. I think it was $300. Yeah.
Nice.
And I always tell this story. I had never painted before, right? Like I loved drawing, but I was honestly intimidated by like color and paints and stuff. I was not that. Everything was like controlled with me.
This camera, dude, it's not supposed to be doing that.
So I was always scared of color when it came to my drawings or whatnot. For whatever reason, because we did not grow up religious, my parents really wanted me to do like my first Holy Communion. So I did. Church was a completely foreign environment to me at the time. And my Spanish wasn't good enough to like actually follow.
Where'd you go? What church?
Oh, God. I don't remember the name of it. It's right there.
San Antonio de Padua? Or
Yeah, probably.
that's where I did mine too.
It's right here on State, off of State, and like before you get to
Oh, it's on State.
no, like right off of State. Like I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, go on.
Iglesia. I
I think it's San
not
Antonio de Padua, but go on.
I just like get rid of all that. Yeah, it probably is. And anyways, so they would have us do drawings sometimes, And one time I did a drawing, it was like a Christmas drawing, and had all this stuff going on. It was like a whole scene with like Santa and the kids and like parents asleep and everything. And it was like a cutoff of a house, the side of a house, like a Barbie house. And the instructor, the teacher, really wanted me to color it. I finished fast, and she was like, "Here's some markers." Like, and I said, "No, I don't want to do color." And she said, "Why not?" And I was like, "Because then I'm gonna mess it up." Like I didn't want to, you know, I wanted to be proud of it. I didn't want to take chances. So it took a long time for me to actually explore. I don't know. I feel like most young kids that are into art just like do everything. I was not like that.
Yeah, I totally see that. I'm the same way when it comes to color. I suck at color, and you know, it's just
It's a whole nother layer of consideration and of you know.
When I first, even with photography, when I first started, that's why I did black and white all the time, because it was so much easier to just remove that aspect of it,
Right.
and only deal with, you know, composition,
Value, composition,
exactly.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
anyways, so this is all high school, and you're already like fucking going through it.
I mean, yeah, I had a lot of interest in high school. I liked to skateboard a lot. I was trying to play music in a punk band at that time. That was kind of the scene that I was.
How many of our guests have like told that story that they were in a punk band?
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
mostly we hung out with my friend's punk band, which was called Fallout.
Okay.
And
Not Fallout Boy, but
no, but Fallout
without the
yes.
boy, yeah.
Pre-Fallout Boy. They stole the name from The Simpsons. And so we were going like on the weekends, go to gigs in East LA, backyard gigs, you know, and there was like Fallout, Teenage Rage, Union was there for a
Union
minute.
13?
Before, Union 13. They were just called Union back then.
Nice.
Dysfunction, a bunch of other bands, local bands.
What did you play?
I wasn't in any of those bands, but I was playing guitar, and then I realized that was too many strings for me, so I switched to bass. And I got big hands with fat fingers, so that helped. Eventually, I actually wasn't like in a consistent band till I was in college, but we were called Homesick. But when I was in high school, they eventually asked me to start doing the flyers for those shows. So I did a lot of those flyers. That was a lot of fun too.
Nice. Do you still have some of those?
Yeah, I do actually. It was cool. My favorite thing was like to design a logo for each band. Like I would design a different logo or like use different lettering, you know?
Huh.
So-
There's this guy named he goes by like Rock and Roll Archive or something like that. He like archives all these things and saves them, and you should probably hit him up if
That's
you have
cool.
extra copies of all that stuff, and just send them to him, and you know he could put them
Yeah.
in his system. So you mentioned that you started in college a band and all that. So tell us a little bit about how you ended up at this college, which is down in Orange County.
Yeah. Now it's called Laguna College of
Beach.
Art and Design.
Laguna College of Art and Design.
LCAD, yeah. But back when in the 90s, it was still called Art Institute of Southern California.
Oh, it was an art institute. Okay.
No, they changed the name because the art institutes got big and they didn't want to be seen as an art
Associated with
institute.
it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I was there the last 5 years. It took me 5 years to get my degree. The last 5 years I was there were the last 5 years that it was called Art Institute of Southern California.
Okay.
And then after that, they changed the name to LCAD. But God, I really ended up there by chance. It's funny that I work for the school now as an admissions counselor because basically, like what I tell kids not to do is everything that I did when I was applying to the school.
Well, let's slow down and let's go back to how you ended up there in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. So you were in high school. You were finishing, wondering what to do.
Yeah, I was in high school. I knew I wanted to be an artist. By that point, I was obsessed with comic books and anime. So if I was drawing, it was one of those two things. I was in a lot of AP and honors classes at that point. Really underachieving in all of them, but I was in them. I learned at some point growing up that like if I just got good enough grades and were like in good classes, then my parents and everyone would sort of stay off my back so I could do what I wanted to do, which was like skateboard, draw, play music. But so there was a big push for all of my classes, like all the students there to, apply to Cal States, UCs. And I didn't want to do any of that. I was not interested in going to college and doing 2 more years of general ed classes and then, trying to fit art in there somewhere. By the time my senior year was coming close, I was like ready to be done with that obligation so I could just focus on art full time. So my plan at the time was to just draw a bunch of comics like I had been, go down to Comic-Con, get discovered, draw Spider-Man for the rest of my life. That was really it. And I remember distinctly the reactions of like my AP teachers when I like Miss Mendoza. To this day, I'm sorry, Miss Mendoza. She was my AP calculus teacher my junior year of high school, and she was really pushing me to. Her teacher was Jaime Escalante.
Wow.
And she brought him once to come and like talk to us to try to motivate us. I don't think we were a very motivated group of students. And she really was pushing. She was like, you could go to UCLA, you could do this, that. And when I told her I wanted to be a comic book artist, I remember the look on her face to this day. But that was I was set. My mind was made up. Thankfully.
But also, comic book artist is a good job.
I mean, yeah, but at the
Maybe
time,
they
this is
didn't
not
see it.
now where everyone knows who the hell Thanos is, which is fucking crazy to me because, back then I was made fun of for that shit. But thankfully they did they didn't say you don't do that. My parents too. My parents didn't say no, don't do art. But they also, because neither of them really went to college, my dad went to LA Trade Tech actually for a little while, but they were just like, okay, do that, but be successful. Like if you're gonna do it, make it work. And so they pointed me towards art schools. And I did a little bit of research. We would take trips to the College Corner at Roosevelt. And everything was UC this and Cal State that. And I would go to the desk and say, I want to go to art school. And they'd be like, good luck. Yeah, I don't, So this is pre-internet days or like early internet days. So I just opened a big book of colleges in the United States, looked up art, looked up California. This was around the time that we were taking our SATs, because when you take the SATs, on the back of the form, you write the 4 schools that you want your score sent to. So I looked up art schools in California, and I saw Otis had Los Angeles next to it. I'd never heard of Otis. I didn't know what it was. Art Center had Los Angeles or Pasadena next to it, and I was like, oh, I've been to Pasadena. So I wrote that school down. I wrote down Academy of Art San Francisco. I didn't know how I was going to get to San Francisco, but I had seen those commercials on the times that I would stay home from school sick, those commercials. And then I saw this school, Art Institute of Southern California, and I didn't know where Laguna Beach was, but it did say rolling admissions.
What does that mean?
That means that there's no deadline.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, perfect for me. Like, I procrastinate. That sounds good to me. So I wrote down those 4 schools on the back of my SAT form, and that was it. Didn't follow up, didn't apply to any of the schools, didn't reach out, didn't make a portfolio. I continued with my senior year. I took my SATs, I went to prom, I went to grad night, I graduated. And that was it. I was working every summer since I was like 14. I would work as a plumber's apprentice. So I was learning like my tío on my mom's side, my tía's husband at the time, was a really young white dude who was a really good plumbing foreman on like new construction. And they had me working with him every summer since I was 14. So after I graduated high school, it was business as usual. Like, okay, I went back to work for him. And somewhere like around July or August, my parents were like, what's the deal? Did you go to college? Like, they're very hands off, but they were like, well, where's your plan? And I said, I made it up at the time. I was like, oh, there's this school in Laguna. It's my dream school. Like, by then I had missed all the deadlines. So I didn't, I just thought, oh, yeah, I remember there's no deadline to it. So I was like, this is the school I want to go to. I made it seem like, that was my
plan all along.
Yeah. So my dad took me down there. We drove down to Laguna Beach, drove down the canyon. Like everybody, we passed the school the first time driving down there. It's really small. It was even smaller then. But when we found the right spot, I took a tour. I was really intimidated by the work on display. Really, as a matter of fact, at one point, my dad turned to me and was like, "You can do this?" I'm like, "Shit, I hope so. Like, I want to come here." Yeah. I think this is crucial. My admissions counselor at the time, the school only had 2 counselors. My admissions counselor was Anthony Padilla, Chicano from LA, or at least was based in LA as an artist. And that, like looking back now, that was crucial. Like I feel like I was able to talk to, like my first exposure to the school was somebody that was brown, that I felt comfortable with right away. I saw myself in a little bit. And he
They
gave
probably
me
saw you coming there like, Anthony, get this one.
yeah,
Anthony, this is
Yeah.
you. Step
And
up to the plate.
exactly. He gave me the rundown. I was not trained. I had never taken like legit art training of any sort. And he really gave it to me like straight. He was like, look, because I had my portfolio was like a manila folder of like drawings of Spider-Man. I even had drawings on the back of homework that I never turned in. Like it was not like an art school portfolio. But he saw something. I don't know. Maybe he saw tuition. He saw something. And he sat me
Saw
down.
his quota being.
Yeah. And he said, look, the way he said it was, you're going to get into the school, but, and I was like, oh shit. Mind you, you grow up being the art kid. You're like the person who draws at your school,
Yeah. So it's like big fish in a little pond, but now you're like
Yes.
little fish in a big pond, yeah.
And he said, you're going to be in here with a lot of other students that have had great high school art programs, have had private tutors, they know, they're more experienced, they know. And he just said, don't be intimidated by that. Like you have drawing skill, it's just really raw, and you're just gonna have to work a little harder to get up to speed, but you will do it. And that, I felt like he wasn't blowing smoke up my ass, because it wasn't all just good news.
Yeah.
And I also am very competitive, low key. I think hopefully it's low key. I'm a really competitive person, so that drove me to say, okay, I can do it. And now I didn't know at the time that the school's fully accredited, which is good.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the degree is a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a BFA, which is good. I didn't know that. I didn't know that it's the least expensive private art school on the entire West Coast.
Damn.
I didn't know that at the time, And at that, I still don't know how my parents were able to afford that. I mean, we had a lot of help, obviously, but it was rough sometimes, Like I really think I was definitely that kid that the business office was sometimes calling out of class. Like, hey man, we need a payment, if you want to finish this semester or whatever. But yeah, I did it. Yeah.
How was your let's try to break down how was your first year there and dealing with being in a culture clash?
I was not prepared for that. It was real culture shock. This might sound, I don't know, bad. I didn't think of myself as Mexican growing up. Like I didn't think of myself as, I knew I was Mexican, I knew I was Latino, but that was not I guess because if you grow up around, similar community and culture, there's nothing stands out about that. Yeah, I don't thought of myself as an artist, whatever. And so that was the first time that I spent significant time around being a minority, basically.
Yeah.
And which is funny because I always kind of felt like I didn't quite fit in growing up. And I thought, when I go to art school, I'm going to be around a bunch of artists and, I'm going to find...
Homies.
Yeah. Fucking no. No. The first semester...
Yeah. God damn it.
So my first semester in college was the first time I'd ever had anybody comment on how I talk.
You have an accent.
That shit blew my
I
mind.
remember that too, yeah.
Because it was just, we're a bunch of freshman art students. We're in class, all working kind of quietly. There's music playing, whatever. We're all doing our thing. And while we're drawing or whatever, we're talking. We're having a kind of discussion about accents. And I don't know how it turned into accents, but somebody was kind of like Ray's accent. And I was like, what? Who? What?
And I was like... And they were telling me that I had an accent.
My immediate thought was Ricky Ricardo. I was like, what the fuck? I thought, I don't sound like that. And I remember coming home that weekend because I would spend the week at my Theo's house. He had a bachelor condo in Dana Point. I didn't drive at the time. And so on Friday, on Sunday night, my dad would drive me to Dana Point with a bag of clothes, and I would spend the night sleeping on my Theo's couch and doing my homework on his TV trays. Every day I would bus it to Laguna, and then on Friday he would pick me up from school, and he would drive me back up to Boyle Heights, and I would spend the weekend here, see my girlfriend, see my friends, see my family, and then I would go back. That's how I did my freshman year. So
you're lucky you had somebody in Dana Point, though.
I know, right? Well, I started driving during the holidays of that year. Finally got my license and then started driving.
Okay.
But I came back that weekend, after that first week, and I told all my friends in Boyle Heights that we had accents, and they were like, "Get the fuck out of here! No, shut up. We don't have accents." And I'm like, that's what
Of course you do,
We
yeah.
have accents.
I went through the same thing. That's hilarious. It's a trip that like us that grew up in East LA and Boyle Heights, because it is strictly like just Mexicans most of the time, and you don't really get to like witness like different races until you're 18 and you go off somewhere, you get jobs in places. Yeah. So yeah, that's a trip.
And I had friends. I mean, I did meet a lot of people from a lot of different places. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Some of the first friends that I made was an older couple. Well, older. I mean, I was 18. They were, maybe in their early 20s. But they befriended me pretty quickly. They were a white couple, but they had grown up in Hawaii, both of them. Actually, no. Bryce is white. Judy's Chinese and I think Irish. But they both grew up in Hawaii, and they were actually at LCAT from Hawaii. And they befriended me really early on, which I thought was super cool. And then later on, they were like, "We thought you were Hawaiian." Or like, "We thought you were Samoan or Hawaiian or like Pacific Islander or something."
Dude.
Yeah, so we're friends to this day. We laugh about it, but
That's fucking funny.
yeah, so definitely it was an eclectic group there. It was a small school though. The entire student body when I was there was 201 students.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, my graduating
That's
class.
lucky, yeah.
I graduated in 2002, and my graduating class was 42.
Is it still the same size?
No, we're at 750 students now, around there.
Still a good size,
Still,
yeah.
still pretty small, yeah.
How was the first year as an artist? Like, how was it challenging for you?
I loved it. I mean, it was challenging, but I have to say it was also really affirming, like validating, because there's so many different ways to approach art and to approach art training, And what the school that I ended up at just happened by total accident, just happened to approach it in exactly the way that I wanted to learn. And this was luck. Because I wasn't interested in abstraction. I wasn't interested in like conceptual or postmodern work. I wanted to draw comics, which meant I wanted to be able to draw the human figure in a believable way from my imagination in whatever pose I wanted to draw it, and then put those figures in believable spaces. And this school is all about like technical ability, like training you to have a technical skill set that'll prepare you for your industry. As a matter of fact, the fine art program doesn't do abstraction at all. It's all representational realism. It's all figure drawing, figure painting. And then the other programs are all sort of built off of that as well, most of them. So that was great. Like my first year, I felt like I was a sponge. Like I was just finally getting the information. When you spend time growing up trying to draw a human figure and trying to pose it and going like, okay, the Silver Surfer is standing on this board and that looks a certain way, and he's got to be doing like a dynamic superhero pose, and just struggling, never comes out. Like, who knows what muscles are going on in the leg? You just like have no idea. It's just a leg, right? And then getting to art school, and literally the figure drawing class is like, here's a figure. Here are the bones and the muscles, and this is what it looks like, and this is how to draw from different angles. It was amazing. Like it changed everything for me. Yeah.
What kind of challenges did you face?
I didn't have a good work ethic. I was not a good student, and this came from high school. Again, I was in tough classes in high school, but I was doing the bare minimum, and I'm thinking, when I get to the classes that really matter, I'll turn it on like a switch. It doesn't fucking work that way. Like you either develop that work ethic and those through repetition, or you don't. You either have it, you have that built up in you, or you don't. And so I failed a class my freshman year.
Oh, shit.
Which I had never failed anything academic like that before.
That first fail is hard.
That was really hard, yeah. And I also realized like I'm gonna have to switch things up. But I struggled. I struggled all 5 years with showing up. I realized now looking back, like I wasn't really present. Now I know through therapy that I grew up disassociating a lot, that, you know, I still struggle with that. Who the fuck knows when you're growing up? Like, I didn't.
Yeah, we don't know those words
No,
or
we
anything
didn't.
like
Exactly,
that.
exactly. So now looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe there was, you know, things that could have been diagnosed so that we were, you know.
Even that relates to like the whole like I didn't know I was Mexican because my parents from the rancho, they didn't need to like instill in us like a pride or anything. It's just like we were Mexican and it was just like existing. They didn't have to remind you that you're Chicano or anything. We didn't even know what the word Chicano was, you know,
Right.
until so it wasn't for me too until I got to college that I got to learn all these things about
Yeah.
ethnicity and race and
I want to say I had a slightly different experience because my parents were really young when they had me. My dad was, I think, 22. My mom was 21. And they were...
they were also raised here.
My dad was born in Agualulco, in Jalisco, and he came here when he was 9 years old.
Okay.
My mom was actually born in Boyle Heights at Lincoln Hospital.
Yeah.
And she grew up in East LA off of Gage and Cesar Chavez.
Okay.
Or Brooklyn back then.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like their generation was, the goal was assimilation. It was like, be American, right? Like adopt those things.
Yeah.
And so my parents, in our household, it was very Americanized. And that was a choice on their part. Like I talk to my dad about it now.
Yep.
And he's like, you're Mexican. There's nothing you could do about that shit, you know?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you could move in other spaces and you were, you know, like you were able to like, not be, you know, held back by racist shit that you're going to have to deal with, you know? So in our house growing up, we watched, you know, network sitcoms and shit. And like my dad he was in a softball league. He loved the Beatles and the Who. He loved Richard Pryor. My mom loved Donna Summer and Anita Baker and Alfred Hitchcock movies.
Yeah.
So that's what I grew up around in, you know, my sister and I in our household. But we did grow up in an apartment building that was all full of family. So more traditional, yes. So downstairs, when I would go downstairs to my grandparents' apartment, that was, I feel like, a more traditional.
Oh, all your family.
All my family.
That's cool.
No, I was like almost literally raised by a village. Like it was.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Everybody there. It's okay, man.
No, that's not good. So one of these cameras keeps shutting off. So if the conversation is a little like jumpy, that's what happened. So
yeah, you'll add a
we'll
blurb at the beginning of the.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, upstairs in our apartment that I grew up in was one environment, and then downstairs in my grandparents' apartment was a different environment. I would say more traditional. You know, there they were, you know, watching Sábado Gigante and you know watching Univision.
Yeah, Chavo del Ocho. And all that.
Yeah,
that's where you got all your.
Exactly, and the food was all like, you know, Mexican food, like really fucking amazing, you know, Mexican food that my grandma was cooking. My dad loved to cook. My mom didn't do really any of the cooking growing up. It was all my dad, and he liked trying out different cuisines, and so it was just different, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like I got two very different experiences wrapped into one.
That's awesome, yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up with all my cousins and all my tias always around and everything because everyone was the apartments on Cornwall were like the headquarters of the family. Yeah.
So getting back to like school and your art process, how did you end up like growing your art, or how did you?
That's a good question. Because I went in wanting to do comic books, but I had never really been exposed to lots of different kinds of art, which is crazy, right? Because there's so much fucking art in Boyle Heights, and there's so many murals and so many amazing artists. This place has like a legacy of amazing art and activism, right?
Yeah, but if it's not pointed out to you and explained to you, like the
Yes.
process of it, we don't.
Yes, and also my family was very protective of us, so I was never really let outside the gate. I was like. You know, it took me years to learn, like after college, and I came back to learn about like Casa and to learn about like Corazón del Pueblo and to learn about like all these things that were happening and some of the history of the murals and shit. I wasn't aware of that growing up. So when I was just focused on comic books, and they were really shitty too, really shitty comics, like the worst like superhero comics. I had friends that sometimes would try to point me towards good shit. Shout out Lourdes Briseño. She was one of my really cool ass friends in high school that would like hand me like a DC Vertigo comic, or like hand me like a Love and Rockets, or like bro, there's some good shit out there. But I was just, I was like, superheroes, crappy, fucking flashy art. And so, but when I got to art school, like I didn't even know what illustration was. I applied for drawing and painting because it had the word drawing in it. I had no interest in painting. And then I realized like, oh, illustration is appropriate because I want to do graphic novels and comics, but I wanted to learn other things as well. It's very broad, that major usually. And so I had to learn how to paint. I didn't want to learn how to do oil painting and shit, but I had to get my degree. I had to learn graphic design skills. I had no interest in sitting in front of the computer back then. Of course, as soon as I graduated, all the jobs that I got were graphic design jobs. So I'm glad that I did that. But the big eye-opener for me was I really fell in love with painting. And our instructors were very straightforward with us and said, look, it's harder to sustain a career, if you're just going to paint. Yeah. It's better to diversify your skill set. And so I did that, thankfully. But in the back of my artistic brain, painting was always something that I was like, man, if I could just paint, that's what I would want to do. So, but again, I'm very focused on process. I love process. I know you had Elmer on here, and he talked a lot. I love his work, and he talked somewhat about process. Sergio Peran was on here as well, and Sonia Romero. They both have been my mentors. I just finished my MFA. I went back and finished my MFA, and they were both my mentors in the program. Wow. And so I loved learning about their approach and their process. So even when I was in my undergrad program, I was hungry for process. Like, show me the steps, give me the secrets, like show me the tools that I need to do. You got
your BFA what year?
I got my BFA in illustration. I was there from 1997 to 2002.
And when did you go back for your MFA?
So after 2002, I came back and I worked as a commercial illustrator and designer for about 12 to 13 years. And I also taught during that time.
Damn.
Yeah.
So there's a whole block here that we're missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and there's a whole thing about I love talking about after college because I think college grads, especially art students, they get really discouraged after getting their bachelor's because it's a jungle. Especially for artists, it's hard working artists, and it was hard for me. But thankfully I was able to figure shit out. But when I first graduated, I was working professionally by my junior year. I was good enough that my teachers were recommending me to people that were looking for young artists, And so my senior year, I was cocky as fuck. I never developed that work ethic that I wanted because I was already working, and I just thought, oh, I got this in the bag. I was young, I didn't know shit. And I did really bad my senior year. Damn. And I graduated, and sure enough, the jobs dried up, and I didn't know what to do. So
wow,
I kind of.
What kind of work were you doing?
By the time I graduated my senior year, I did a bunch of oil paintings of comic book characters, and my teachers were like,
or work for
yeah,
for ads or
DC characters, Marvel characters, my own characters that I was making up. And my instructors were like, dude, that's not you have a very
You mean that's the work you were doing in class, not as a job?
No, that's the work that I was doing my senior year hoping to get a job.
Oh, okay.
And my instructors were like, that's a very slim market there. There's not a huge demand. You better, but I didn't listen. So sure enough, after I graduated, I realized I don't have the portfolio to get a job. So I started working at a music store, Warehouse Music in Alhambra. And because that was one of the side jobs that I had when I was a student. And I reworked my portfolio, from scratch almost. I made a professional looking portfolio. I had the skills, but I hadn't put in the work when I was in school. And I built a website, which was very helpful. And then I started getting jobs little by little. But it wasn't enough to sustain a career.
What kind of jobs is what I'm wondering? What were you applying for, back when you just graduated?
Everything. It was everything on Craigslist, just grinding for art jobs, sending out my portfolio link.
But what are those jobs?
At the time,
were you doing graphic design for businesses? Were you painting walls? Were you?
So yeah, my first paying job was someone wrote a children's book, a children's book version of Robinson Crusoe, Stuck on the Island. So they were recording vocals for a DVD, and they were turning these children's books into DVD versions. and they needed images for the screen, basically, like to pan, like for the camera to pan across, and like, you know, they were like these little children's DVDs of like these stories. And so I illustrated Robinson's Crusoe. I made 10 children's book illustrations in like ink and watercolors, what they wanted. And again, I was really thankful that the illustration program forced me to learn a lot of different mediums. Yeah. And I didn't get paid much either. It was something like $40 an image. And like, so that also let me know, like, I have to make these really fast.
That didn't cover your tuition.
No. Early on, man, you're just trying to like get your foot in the door, get the ball rolling, you know? I think a lot of people don't get that though, you know? Like they think they're going to step into their dream job at Blizzard, and it's like, no,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it does sometimes, but, you know, don't bank on it. But yeah, so I did that. I did logos for, you know, local businesses. Sometimes I got hired as a studio assistant for artists that already had a bigger practice, and I would go in and help them paint murals or whatnot. I got hired by this. So the way it started was after I was working at Warehouse Music, right, part-time, trying to build up illustration gigs. And they filed bankruptcy because CDs were, you know. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so I was out of a job, and my tia was like, "Didn't you grow up doing like plumbing?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Doesn't Home Depot have a plumbing department? Like, go apply at Home Depot. Like, if you need to make money, just go do that." And I did. And the HR lady at Home Depot in Alhambra on Marengo said, "Oh, you have an art degree. Yeah. You're not going to work in the plumbing department. Like, we're going to train you to design kitchens. And you're gonna sit in the kitchen design department, and you're gonna design cabinets for us, and you're gonna work on big ticket projects. Wow. And do that." And so that's what I did. And so having that art degree, just even though something not really related, it came through. Yeah. And so I worked at Home Depot for 3 years in the kitchen cabinet design department. And during that time, I kept building up, you know, my illustration work. I mean, honestly, I was really feeling defeated at that point in terms of my art career. Yeah. Art school felt like a distant memory. I was foolish enough to think that I was going to have that life, you know. Yeah. But there was someone I met in the painting department. His name's Carlos Aguilar, but he's known for his tattoo shop called Howling Wolf Tattoos. Okay. It's on Olympic on the border of East LA and Montebello. He's awesome. And he was working in the paint department at Home Depot at that time. And he was doing tattoos on the side. And whenever someone in the store would go to him for a tattoo, he would be like, "Go to Ray so he could draw it for you." So I was designing tattoos for people in the store. They would pay me to design it, and then they would pay him to tattoo it, right? Wow. And because of that, I had a shitload of tattoo designs. So I threw them up on my website. And a company in Culver City reached out to me called Lockhart Handbags. And they were like a couture women's like handbag company. And it was a couple of designers that have actually broken off from, they had left a major brand. I don't remember what brand it was, like Louis Vuitton or some crap like that. But they had started their own company. And they were like, "We like your tattoo designs. We're doing like the Ed Hardy thing at the time was big. And, you know, we want to print them onto leather. Can you meet with us?" And they were one of my clients for years. Wow. And they paid really well. They took care of me. I ended up redesigning their logo. I ended up doing illustrations for their website. I ended up designing hardware for their bags. Yeah. Now, this was not comics, right? But it was work, and it was fun.
All the tools that you picked up at school,
and it was creative. And I also learned that if people like you, if you are reliable and consistent and you're talented, they don't care if it's not your specialty. They don't want to have to go through the trouble of finding another artist that, you know, they're going to work with you and they're going to keep giving you work. And that's kind of also something that I saw my dad do in his business. You know, he had a print shop in Burbank for years. Yeah. So and then it just grew from there. I did end up working in comics, you know, minimally, but I did. And by that point I realized, like, actually, this is not what I want to do.
That's what I was gonna ask. Because I think when we met, you hadn't started your MFA yet.
No.
So when did that like click? Because I remember when we did talk that first time, you talked a lot about like wanting to paint more and wanting to like create your own like you know, wanted to learn how to create series and things like that.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, that's so funny that I was already in my brain at the time.
Yeah, you were talking about that, and
I mean, illustration is great, but it's a grind. It was definitely.
But I had already also at that time I had senior paintings, and in my head I knew you as a painter. Because I had senior painting with the woman like pulling the heart out of the chest.
I felt like I was faking it at that point.
Oh, you were. I mean, that's an amazing painting.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you
Gabriel owns that. He used to work at
over at Plaza La Raza. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen in your work always is like that the idea is very very clear. Like your thought process is visible. It's easy for people to understand, and you have deep concepts. You know, it's not just a couple in love. Like there's a lot of deep shit going on in that painting that you share with us.
I think that has a lot to do with my illustration training, and because I bring that to my paintings. You know, like I have a narrative. Basically I want to storytell. That's to me, that's the thread that goes from comics to illustration now to like my paintings. Is I want to tell stories. I considered film school for a while until every film school graduate that I knew said don't go to film school. So I kind of scratched that off the list. But I just always wanted to tell stories. I mean, I still would like to write and create and publish a graphic novel someday. I would, you know. But so I had been working as an illustrator for a long time. At that point, for years, I was working as a high school substitute teacher. So when I was at Home Depot, I designed this lady's cabinets for her kitchen, and I was telling her that I was an artist. And she was like, "Oh, I work at Central Juvenile Hall, right there on Soto, heading into El Sereno. And we're always looking for substitute teachers. If you ever wanted to do that, hit me up." And then something happened when I was because I was miserable at Home Depot, man. I was not a good employee. I was phoning it in, and I was.
It wasn't what you wanted to do. So.
Exactly. But I didn't know how to get myself out of it.
Yeah.
And then the choice was kind of made for me. I was playing a lot of basketball at that time right here at State Street Rec Center. A lot of basketball. And I think that's how I was getting out like my aggression and my frustration, you know? But I also love playing basketball. And one night I blew out my knee. I tore my meniscus and my MCL. And I didn't have insurance. And I didn't know what to do. And I ended up having to go on disability. For like a month, 2 months, I was in bed and didn't ever end up getting surgery because I couldn't afford it. So my knee's still crap. But I sat in bed and said, what the fuck is my life? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm supposed to be an artist, blah, blah, blah. So that really forced me to like reevaluate everything in my path. And I went back to Home Depot and they like fired me like not long after that because they were like, this guy's not, you know? And I called that lady, and she said, come be a substitute teacher. And so I started being a high school sub, and I found that I fucking loved it. It was great. I worked at, like, Central Juvie. I worked at a lot of community day schools. I worked at continuation schools. Eventually, I started working at iPoly, International Polytechnic High School, which is on the campus of Cal Poly Pomona. And I became, like, their top sub. And somebody there said, hey, there's a school in this district that's an arts high school at Cal State LA. And that was Loxa.
Oh, that's right. You ended up at Loxa.
I didn't know about Loxa. So I went and introduced myself.
Yeah.
And the woman, the administrative person in the office who hires subs, was like, are you from Boyle Heights? I go, yeah. And she goes, do you know Ramón Vargas and like Carlos Vargas? I'm like, that's my dad and my tío. And she was like, oh my God, I went to school with them. I went to Roosevelt with them. So Mona, shout out Mona Garcia, changed everything for me because she started hiring me as a sub at Loxa.
Wow.
So I was a high school sub for 10 years while I was doing freelance illustration and stuff. And then I started working at Job Corps. Have you heard of Job Corps?
Not really.
It's a federally funded vocational school for at-risk youth.
Okay.
It's kind of like Peace Corps, but it's Job Corps, and they basically take young people that are probably like on a path to struggle for like income, and they give you job training and vocational skills, and they help you get a job. It's a 2 or 3 year program. So I got a night job at Job Corps. They had a recreation department, and they needed someone to run the art department, and so I ran the art department there for like 4 years. So I was doing substitute teaching during the day, Job Corps at night from 5 to 10, and then illustration and art all in between. And I got to a point where I wanted to be part of the community, man. Like I went to self-help. Everything was amazing, but I was like, I don't know how to.
This is a trip because I always wondered, like, fucking Ray, like you grew up in Boyle Heights. Why is it that like you didn't get involved, or why is it that I didn't hear about you years ago, or why is it that all of a sudden you came out and like, and so yeah, this explains a lot. I mean, you were also struggling with who you were and what your identity was, and not sure what to fucking how to move forward with all this. What a trip.
Yeah, I also had a lot of anxiety growing up, but I didn't realize that until recently. Therapy helped me realize. My therapist at one point was like, "You're the best at coping that I've ever worked with," and I was like, "Thanks, that's great." She had to go,
good, yeah.
"No, bro, that's not something that's to be proud of." But I realized that I wanted to be part of the community, and there was a lot of amazing creative people here that I was lonely too, you know. So because illustration, I mean, you're in your studio all day by yourself.
So like, I mean, you're this guy with like amazing technical skill, right? So what is it that was holding you back from like completely diving into painting, and what is it that you finally what is it that finally got you through that to like, you know, because now you have a show at
Orange County Center for Contemporary Art in Santa Ana.
And I mean, what's up? Tell us about your painting career now. Like you have a painting show, so
yeah. I
awesome.
mean, thank you. A lot of it was figuring shit out, like personal stuff. To be honest, I think I always felt a little bit like I don't know. I just always felt like people were gonna go, "Oh, wait a minute, this was fucking faking it," you know? Like he's not, you know. And I think I was afraid of failure, and I just didn't know what I wanted to say. I think, which again, illustration, it's a collaboration. Someone brings their idea, and then you try to make it better. But when it came time to do my own idea, I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. One of the first people to ask me was Hannibal Garcia. He's part of Ninosca Arte. And he was pushing me like, hey, I'm putting on these shows at Mel's Bar. You should make art. But I didn't have any personal work. It was all work for hire stuff. Yeah. And somebody called me up and said, they're trying to get an East LA art walk started at Belvedere Park, and you should have a table. They're free tables. And so I said, okay. And so at that point, thanks to Hannibal, I was trying to make personal work. A lot of it was crap early on, but like I was figuring it out, you know? And then I had a vendor's table at East LA Art Walk the first year that they did. It was 2010, I think. And people, like, they all knew each other. They were like all like artists and vendors and like artisans and craft people. Like, it was amazing. And they would all come over and go, "Who are you? Where are you from?"
Exactly.
You know, I got the shakedown. Where the fuck are you from? You know, and I was like, I'm from here. But I met a lot of amazing people that summer. Gloria Molina's office liked my work, and they asked me to illustrate her holiday card, her annual holiday card. So I met Oscar Magallanes that night, and he gave me some great advice. One time I went to Avenue 50 Studios I had heard a gallery was there, and I saw Sonia Romero's work, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. I had no idea who Frank Romero was. I didn't know about like, you know, Los Four or like any of that. And I took her card, and then one day I just called her, and I was like, how do I be an artist? Cold call in the middle of the day.
You already have a BFA, right?
Yeah, but I didn't.
You still don't know how.
I was trying to be a different kind of artist than what I was trained for, and
more
I saw
commercial and more.
And I was trying to be a more personal artist, and she talked to me for over an hour. Wow. She didn't know who the fuck I was, and she really gave me a ton of good advice and validated me. So that kind of tipped it off, and then I started being in group shows. I started making more paintings. To me, they were kind of more illustrations, you know. Alfonso Caliarte, he tabled next to me at the East LA Art Fest, and he was like, you have cool paintings, bro, but like no one's gonna buy those fucking paintings. Like, check it. Like, and he had a whole setup, and I was impressed, and he showed me how he makes his prints and stuff. And so I went to self-help, and I took Dewey's silkscreen class and learned silkscreening, and started making silkscreen prints at different like price points along with my paintings. Back then, Dead Mundo and Sketch were like organizing a bunch of art shows all over the place. I was in a lot of those shows. Got to meet like and be part of a fucking amazing community of artists. And then that kind of just snowballed. And so I got to that point, and I was like, okay, I'm meeting cool people like yourself, and you know, they know me as an artist and a painter now. That's great. When they did the Boyle Heights 4K here, when Juan did that, he asked me to come down and paint a mural. And when they had Ciclavia here, they asked me to paint a mural and design a shirt for that, so I
Classic
did.
shirt, yeah.
So, you know, that was cool. And then I thought, how the fuck do I like progress in my painting? And out of the blue, my friend Fatima Silva, who I went to art school with, she was working at LCAD, and she said, hey, they're looking to hire an admissions counselor. You should come down and do this job. And it would have been about the same amount that I was making at the time, but I was doing like 3 different jobs, sometimes 4. And I didn't have any insurance coverage. I didn't, you know, so I said, okay. And then they said, you could travel. You're going to be around other artists. You're going to mentor young artists.
So you're going to represent the school that you went to, which is awesome.
And you can get your MFA for free if you come.
What? Oh, okay.
I was like,
let's do it.
Check. Let's go. Sign me up.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
So I moved. It was really hard to move out of Boyle Heights. Really hard. I miss it so much. I get emotional when I come back here because I miss it so much. But I found Santa Ana, which is an amazing fucking community in Orange County. If I got to be in Orange County, I'm going to be in Santa Ana. And started working in Laguna Beach in 2015 and started the grad program in 2017. And it was free, but I had to do it part-time because I was working full-time. It took me 4 or 5 years to complete, and I just graduated. So I got my MFA in 2022, 20 years exactly from when I got my BFA.
And this MFA was focused on painting.
It's a painting MFA. So
that's awesome.
I learned, like I got a deeper training in like painting practices. I got to mentor under some amazing painters like I shared. My first mentor and probably the one that had the biggest influence on me was Luis Serrano. You should definitely have on this podcast. Okay. He graduated from Otis with Kerry James Marshall, who's one of my favorite painters. And Luis is fucking amazing. He teaches at Art Division I think it's in Koreatown or around there, which is an awesome like nonprofit school, after school program thing. But
how do you think the master's program changed your painting? Or your approach to painting?
Well, God, I have to say, I mean, it really just prompted me. That's it. I think it made me feel like I was entitled to call myself a painter, that I had earned it. You know, a lot of it was I was older than a lot of the other students in the MFA program, and I had this whole history as an illustrator. And so a lot of my mentors were just like, dude, you're a fucking painter. Like, what do you, like, what you're talking about is already there.
You're already doing it.
But there was some technical things like drawing figures, right? Or painting figures. Painting figures in an imagined environment and making it look right. That's hard to do. Like multiple figures in an environment.
I know it's hard to do.
That shit is, it's daunting. And then I have to say, like, a lot of this coincided with therapy. Like, I started therapy, like intense therapy, a year before the pandemic hit, which thank God, dude. Because if I was, when we first quarantined, I was by myself without like really any human contact for like 3 or 4 months in my apartment. And I was doing therapy during that time too, like virtually, and just going back and sort of like addressing things and learning about like my positionality, which I also learned from like other people, I gotta say, Magali Miranda. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Magali. I can't remember your last name. She's a doctoral candidate at UCLA studying Chicane and Central American studies, and she's someone that I know from Boyle Heights. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I wanna talk about these things in my paintings, but I need help. And she was my tutor. For a minute, she looked at my work and gave me feedback, and we had these discussions. Oops, I touched the mic. We had these discussions that really helped me sort of like envision like some of the topics that I wanted to dive into in my paintings. And a lot of it is personal. A lot of it is like figuring out, like unpacking my privileges, finding out my positionality, like, where my experience sort of like as a man, as a brown person, as like a cis hetero person, like how does that affect my experience, and then what effect do I have on on my relationships and my environments or whatever, whoever I'm sort of like in community with. So all of this is like nuanced. It's very complicated. And it's always changing. I went through a period of like 2 years where I didn't make any art because I just thought like, I don't want to, whatever I'm thinking right now, I'm probably going to think it's fucking stupid like 6 months from now. And I don't want to like freeze this in a moment in time in a painting, but you got to get over that, you know, like you got to just accept that like we're human beings. We're all like on a path, hopefully, of like, you know, just trying to achieve more awareness and reduce the harm that we're, you know, causing around us. And it's okay to put that process in your art. As a matter of fact, I think now like it should be in your art. You know, if you want your art to be true and honest to, you know, to who you are.
Even just as an exercise to like put it out. You know, you don't have to show it to anybody, but at least do it. You know?
Right, that's true. Yeah.
At least exercise it so that you learn how to convey whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, and some of the paintings that are in my show now, I did not ever plan to show to anybody. And I have some paintings that I'm probably never going to show to anybody, but they were like really personal, like discussions that I was having with myself, like internally at the time. And that's not how I was trained, you know?
Yeah.
My thing as an illustrator was like, I don't paint my feelings. I'm a hired gun, you know what I mean? And now it's just...
That's the one thing that like other schools like really train people at, which is how to get deep inside and like create.
Yeah. But in my experience as a professional, when I was doing illustration, 9 times out of 10, the other pros that I worked with were like, I wish I was technically trained better in art school. So, you know, like I feel like
grass is always greener.
Yes,
you know?
yes. And so here I am now. I feel like I'm making work that is honest.
Well,
you know?
Tell us where your show is, so hopefully people can come out to see it soon.
Yeah, it's in Santa Ana. It's at the Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, or OCA for short. And my show, I'm one of 3 artists that is in the space for the month of April. So it just opened in Art Walk a couple days ago. Santa Ana has an awesome Art Walk. And it's closing the weekend of April 29th. Okay. And I'm doing an artist talk that Saturday. So Saturday, April 29th, I'm going to do an artist talk. I'll be posting that on my social media and everything so people know.
So share your social media with us too. What is it?
I'm at Ray Vargas 3 on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And I just started a TikTok. Learning. Taught myself Adobe Premiere so that I could post TikToks. And,
awesome.
Yeah.
You can also do it on your phone. You don't need Adobe Premiere, but no.
I tried that. It was the things that I was trying to achieve. Like I couldn't figure it out. So
it does make sense, to use Adobe Premiere. So, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to bring up?
I feel like we went over, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely did a long time, but it's fine. I appreciate like you sharing some of your the things that you've been through and personal stuff that I know you're not used to talking about, but definitely appreciate you coming out here and sharing with us.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. This went by a lot fast. I was nervous.
I know it went by so fast.
It did go by fast.
Even with the clock, and I was like, "Oh shit, we're already over an hour." Yeah, even with the interruptions of the cameras here.
I can fucking talk. I told you. I warned you.
Well, is there anything else you want to share before we abruptly cut this off?
No, I mean I can talk about this stuff, and you get used to talking when you're in an MFA program.
Yeah.
You know, Alvaro, who's a friend of mine and was here on the show, talked about the research that you do that goes into it, and how it does teach you how to speak about your work and how to engage people like that want to hear more about the themes or whatnot. And I everything he shared about that really like hit home for me. So,
well, I'm looking forward to seeing your show. I'm definitely gonna come see it before it comes down, and we'll probably get some tacos in Santa Ana because
hell yeah,
I don't go to Santa Ana enough, and I know there's a lot of good places to eat out there.
I mean, my goal is to get those paintings out here. Yeah. Like obviously I really, really love where I live now, but I miss home.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you can.
I got a lot of these paintings, a big ingredient is like the community that I grew up in and, my friends here. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to have a chance to show my work here in LA.
Nice. I also look forward to seeing them in person because it's one thing to seeing them on your social media and just like when I first saw your painting at La Plaza, that was the first time I saw your work, and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And how come he doesn't have like solo shows? And this was way back before your MFA. Like you were already doing like masterful work. So
thank you.
I think there's a question that we ask everybody at the end of each show, and we'll make it short since you're nodding already. Like
I've thought about this.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ramón Vargas, how do you do it?
I've thought about this. I'm going to paraphrase the Beatles, my dad's favorite band, with a lot of help from my friends.
Nice. With a lot of help from my friends. I love that. Well, thanks again for coming down. Look forward to seeing your show.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you guys next week.